Hi, I'm Jenny Muscatel, and I have been a heart mama for 27 years. My daughter was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and she has had a total of 8 open heart surgeries. In 2019, I wrote a memoir. It's called The Journey of Faith and an Open Heart. And there's a lot of my daughter's cardiac journey in this. My daughter's name is Faith. And so, in part, that's the reason for the name of the book, but it's also about my journey of faith throughout the process. So, I am going to read a little bit to you out of chapter 3. And it's a moment in time when we were getting ready to prepare for her first surgery. Daylight faded and evening drew near. Exhaustion set in. We moved back to the ICU with step 1 complete and 2 days to prepare for a massive surgery that had the potential to either save or end my daughter's life. But a decision was made, a step taken in faith, a step knowing I would need to risk her life to save it. I remembered a Bible verse in Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I wrote it on paper and hung it with tape on her crib. The exhaustion I felt was different than any I'd ever known. My body was weak, and my requirement for energy was quickly eating away at any weight left on my bones. Emotionally, I was drained, and everything was a complete blur. I was constantly sorting through emotional reactions, taking in medical information, tracking every detail of action the doctors or nurses performed, watching screens and monitors that revealed information about Faith's internal state, and taking in every part of her that I could. I loved the feeling of her skin and how beautiful she was. I always had the ability to draw and decided to draw her that night while she slept. It was an intimate moment between a mother and child that brought an action of calm. I captured every magnificent detail of her face, hoping to burn her image into my mind so I would never forget her preciousness. I looked at the picture, completed and hung with care next to the Bible verse on her crib. My care for her had changed. I'd always been her comforter, but now was her comfort from trauma. I'd always given her bottles, but now administered tube feedings. One of the cardiologists I referred to often as Dr. Despair said, she needs a feeding tube to build up strength before her surgery. She's too skinny. Look at her. He was blunt, but right. I didn't know that a good part of her weight was fluid overload due to heart failure. And since the doctors had started giving her medication to remove the extra fluid, she did look a bit frail. I was usually the last parent to leave the ICU at night. I noticed nurses didn't always get to the parents when the babies woke up. They need their rest, the nurses said as they made executive decisions for parents with the best of intentions. I told them I needed some reassurance that they would come to me if she woke up. Otherwise, I would not be able to rest. They assured me, but to be safe, that hint for reassurance with the undertone of suspicion, I put a note on her crib next to the picture and Bible verse. It read, "Please don't wake me up unless my mommy is here. I don't understand what's going on, and I'm very scared. I don't feel well. If I cry, please go get my mommy. She's the only one who will make me feel better." The Bible verse I hung on her crib caught my eye. I noticed her name in it, Faith. The night Faith was born, my labor began at church. It was the pastor's last message at the church, and he was moving on to a new location. He was preaching out of 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. That verse gave Faith her name, a name perfectly assigned with a deeper significance than anyone could have ever known. I added the verse to the paper along with Romans 10:17. So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. The need for faith burns strong in my heart. Please, God, I'm listening. Tell me how to have it. I'm so scared, and none of this makes sense. The answer I received was just trust. I heard the word. The word was simple. The act seemed impossible, but a process that would happen in small steps. Beside me lay a stack of papers, information and diagrams of the cardiac team's heroic plans. But now, pieces of scrap paper hanging from my baby's crib laid out a simpler plan, a plan for faith, a plan of faith, a picture of her beauty, a request for her care, faith filling with hope. The tired overtook my mind, and the day ended. The thought of waking up the next day and continuing the countdown to surgery was sickening. A new internal struggle began between wanting to get the surgery day over with so we could simply move past it, and making time stand still so it wouldn't have to come. A choice was not given, time did not stand still, and the countdown moved forward. If you want to read more, you can find my book on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. You can also visit my website at jennymuscatel.com. And thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Emily. I'm the co-founder of the Heart Community Collection. I'm also an ASD Heart Warrior, and I'm going to read for you Snow in Vietnam, which is a book about my mom who survived the Vietnam War, and it's her escape story of how she made it to America and found not only freedom, but medical attention for me, her heart warrior. So this is chapter 10, titled Ragamuffin Chic, and it's August 1976. I wake to the sound of heavy rainfall pounding against my window. It is only 4 a.m. My 2-year-old sleeps beside me. Her breathing is labored and irregular. Her skin is dark and bruised looking. I wonder if my drinking coffee during pregnancy caused her heart to tear. Every morning I fear I will wake up to a lifeless child. I imagine what our life would be like if Thuy Thing and I went to America. With Thuy, my daughter would have received the medical care she needed to repair her heart. I change the story in my mind and imagine myself married to Sam. I can picture us living in his hometown of Bellevue, Washington, and I would be chasing after 2 beautiful Amerasian kids, with another on the way. We would have many children, and I would call them 2, 3, 4, 5. It has been 4 years since Sam's death. For so long, I carry in my heart the sound of Sam's laughter, deep and beautiful, except for when he was in an absolute uproar and no sound escapes his open mouth. His head would tilt back, his eyes in tears, his hands slapping his knees and his mouth agape. And for a few seconds, he would laugh in silence until he caught his breath and let out a lion's roar. How I miss his laugh. How I miss his dimple and his kiwi-colored eyes. I wish I had a photo of Sam so that I could remember every detail of his face. At least I still have the book and his letter. I twirl my wedding ring around. It is time to take it off. It has been 1 year and 4 months since that day Thuy and Annette pulled away from Goong's store. I walk to my dresser and pull open the last drawer. It creaks and wobbles in protest like a piglet separated from the comfort of its mother's body. I pull out from the bottom of the pile my old black pajama pants with the big elastic waist. It is the first and only pair of pants I ever attempted to sew. Brother Seven's wife tried to teach me a few years ago, but gave up. The waist is crooked, Hing had said. Sister Seven, you told me to zigzag the stitching, I barked. Yeah, well, instead you zigzagged your pants. One pant leg is wider than the other, and this one is also noticeably shorter. Hey, sister, the elastic at the waist is also wrong. And why do you have 3 different colors of thread? Well, I broke the black thread and then could not get it through the eye of the needle, so I started over with the red thread, but when that one broke, you cannot pull so hard, and you're supposed to lick the end to smooth the fibers out before you thread the needle. Well, if you were not so cheap and purchased stronger thread, they would not be breaking. You are hopeless. A woman who cannot cook or sew. Let us hope you're the last of your kind. She made me put it on and do a fashion show for the whole family. Sister Six laughed so hard she fell off her chair and split the seams under her right armpit, pointing as she fell. Poor little sister. Let me give you a piastre for those exquisite pants. I must have them for Fashion Week in Paris. Bonjour, mademoiselle. May I proudly present this year's theme, Ragamuffin Chic. Now, the only thing these pants are good for is hiding precious mementos in the elastic waistband. I strip the pants inside out and search for the small hole in the waist. I find the opening and drop my wedding band into it. Clink. I remember what else is in there. My heart beats fast as my fingers work inch by inch to guide the small object through the length of the waist until a portion of it peeks through the hole. In the palm of my hand lies the oval-cut emerald ring that Sam gave me, with its glorious tiny diamonds surrounding the center stone. I put it on and feel the 18-karat gold wrap itself around my left ring finger and imagine Sam's arm wrapped around me. And there is the ring. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you discover more of Snow in Vietnam. It's the first in a trilogy, and it's all about Vietnam, finding new freedoms and finding love and all the hardships that women go through to fight for their babies.
Hi, I'm Debbie Lewis, and I'll be reading from my book, Kitchen Medicine: How I Fed My Daughter Out of Failure to Thrive. After Sammy came home from her third hospital visit at age 1, I called the nurse who scheduled the pediatric ENT's appointments. "Hello," I said into the phone, breastfeeding Sammy in my lap. "My daughter is a patient of Dr. Hollinger's. She's just over 12 months old, has laryngomalacia, and just spent 3 days in the hospital with a cold. Her pediatrician wants Dr. Hollinger to see her again." "Does she have a tracheal tube?" asked the nurse. "No," I said. "Is she on supplemental oxygen?" "No, they sent her home from the hospital without it," I answered, shifting Sammy to my shoulder to rub her back. "Well, doesn't sound like an emergency," droned the nurse. "I could get you an appointment in about 8 weeks. Excuse me. Can you hear me?" "Yes, I can hear you fine." I moved Sammy to my other shoulder and swapped the phone to my other ear. "Oh, thought I heard static. Do you hear the static?" "Oh," I said, "no, that's not static. That's my daughter. She's on my shoulder." "That sound is the baby?" asked the nurse. "Is that her breathing?" "Yes," I apologized. "Sorry, we call her Darth Baby. It's always like this after nursing when she has a cold." "That sound is her breathing?" the nurse repeated. In Dr. Hollinger's office a week later, he raised his eyebrows when we told him that Sammy had suffered through at least 10 ear infections that year. "Of course, some of them might have been one ear infection that never really resolved," I said. "Sometimes she'd finish a round of antibiotics and then get another infection a day or so later." Dr. Hollinger nodded. "What about her eating?" he asked. "Does she like it?" I almost laughed. When my friend Hillary and her daughter Maya were visiting, I had been shocked by what Maya ate in a day. She was 3 months younger than Sammy and eating at least 4 times as much solid food. Sammy, on the other hand, was still stuck on halved blueberries, the dehydrated corn that melted in her mouth, and slivers of watermelon. She managed a few bites of jarred baby food at each meal. I told Dr. Hollinger about all of this, and he pressed me for more. "How about more solid foods? Does she like crackers?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, it's pretty much just fruit and those corn kernels that melt." He looked pensive for a moment and then apologized as he turned back to his computer. After a few moments, he said, "Well, Debbie, I think it's pretty clear that she needs ear tubes, and as long as we're going to put her under for that, I'd love to get a closer look at her airway. It's a very safe procedure, and I do a lot of them. I just think it's time to see why she keeps getting so sick with these upper respiratory infections. I have some ideas, but let's just see how she looks and go from there." Years later, a statement like that would have sent my antenna way up, crackling with a faint signal of danger. I would have pressed him to tell me what he was thinking, what ideas he had. I would have gone home and searched the internet for information about each possibility, joined some online support groups, and asked the members about their experiences with diagnosis. I would have gone into that ear tube and bronchoscopy day more stressed and more prepared for the possibilities that awaited me. Instead, being inexperienced, I went in with curiosity and low expectations. I'd been telling doctors and nurses that something further was wrong with Sammy for more than a year by then, and had heard nothing but over-anxious mom comments from everyone I had asked. Becoming the prepared, expert mother of a medically complex child didn't happen overnight. I could pack a bag for the emergency room in fewer than 5 minutes that first year, but I was not prepared for what was about to change in Sammy's and my life. Within a few weeks of that meeting with Dr. Hollinger, Sammy was in the operating room, where ear tubes were inserted and a long scope went down her trachea. All at once, in the somber gray waiting room at the hospital, we learned something that shone light on both the 13 months that had passed and the next few months ahead of us. After the murkiness of the past year, the clarity was both an enormous relief and a painful punch to my gut. I had brought my friend Kathy to keep me company during Sammy's procedure. It was supposed to be routine, and I'd promised Kathy we'd find somewhere fun to have lunch afterward. David and I thought that Dr. Hollinger would tell us Sammy had a more serious case of gastrointestinal reflux, give us a more powerful prescription, and that would be that. We were very, very wrong. Instead of patting me patronizingly and sending us on our way, Dr. Hollinger described to Kathy and me what he'd seen during the bronchoscopy he'd performed. It looked to him as though Sammy's aorta, the main artery coming out of her heart, had been malformed in the womb. It had, he thought, two equally spaced arches that had wrapped around her trachea and her esophagus. Sammy would need an operation to remove one of those arches, and they were sending someone from the cardiothoracic surgeon's office to talk with us in just a few minutes. In the recovery room, behind the partition, Kathy looked me right in the eyes. "Where am I?" I asked her. Of course, I knew where I was, but on a spiritual level, on a metaphysical level, how had I come to be there? "You're feeding your baby," she said. "That's all you need to know right now."
Hi, my name is Richard Schwint. I am a social worker. I have congenital heart disease, as does my grandson, and honestly, a few other people in my past extended family. Seems to run with us, and I volunteered to do a reading for today of this book, um, which I wrote a few years back. And it's, after I wrote it, I had the sense that it was philosophical as much as anything else. It is meant to be practical. I'm a big believer in practical help. That's what I spend my day doing with other people. I'm a social worker and a psychotherapist. So I'm going to read a passage from this, and bear in mind that we live in a cycle of people start young and old. We live in families, we live in communities. There are elders. We're not little units all alone. We never are. And this is part of the philosophy that's in the book. So this is from a chapter called Managing Your Emotions, particularly anxiety. It starts with a quote by Scott D. Lewis: "Mind is powerful, and you have more control than you think." Many CHD people are anxious and don't understand or acknowledge it. This can take the form of a controlling or angry person who believes they can externalize their emotions rather than admit, "I'm scared." It can also take the form of the withdrawn person who gradually moves away from social involvement and society at large. Some people can go their entire lives with terrible fear and never show or acknowledge it. Some self-medicate with addictive behaviors. This is not the way it needs to be. Anxiety is treatable. As I tell my clients, we have the technology. One of the assumptions of this series of books is that emotional recovery is possible, and there are many ways to achieve it. This is not fantasy. Most of my clients finish work with me better than they started. This is not because I'm a clinical genius, but because they brought the power of intent into the office. Their calling for help often coincided with the call from the family doctor, picking up some reading material, and development of a personal self-care regimen. There is a psychology and attitude to managing anxiety. It involves flowing into the anxiety and, as strange as this sounds, not taking it too seriously. When I tell my clients that, they sometimes are a little put off. Richard doesn't want me to take my anxiety seriously. It's destroying my life. Not to panic, pun intended, but you can mount a vigorous campaign to control and eliminate anxiety and have some fun along the way. I know that sounds contradictory, but Mr. Anxiety, a concrete metaphor, counts on you taking him seriously. I also understand that anxiety at its worst is a severe illness that requires psychiatric care. Mr. Anxiety showed up when I was counseling a child. I do some of my best work with children because They force me to be clear, simple, and straightforward. I take what I learn and use it with adults. In my office, I stand up, put my hands over my head, and say, grrr. Mr. Anxiety is imposing his presence, but he's also an imposter. He whispers bad things. You're going to fail. You can't go on this trip. You can't handle needles. You're too weak to go out. You are sick. You'll never feel better. I show myself backing away from Mr. Anxiety, shrinking and withdrawing into a corner. Now I demonstrate how much Mr. Anxiety likes my fear, and as he grows in strength and ferocity. Then I show myself responding differently to Mr. Anxiety, darting towards him, shaking hands with him, laughing at him, embracing him. Now it's Mr. Anxiety shrinking into the corner. This illustrates a fundamental concept of addressing anxiety: flow into the anxiety.
Hey everyone, my name is Kat Hansen. I'm a heart mom to a heart warrior named Harding. I also have my husband Tom and my daughter Audrey. I am an author, a podcast host, and a CHD advocate. You may know me from the podcast that I do with my husband Tom. It's called the Hope and Courage Podcast for CHD Parents. But we've also written a book. It's called Hope and Courage: 6 Life Lessons from the Parents of a Child with Congenital Heart Disease. Tom and I wrote this book because we are so passionate about empowering and equipping and encouraging other CHD parents and caregivers like us with the hope and courage that they need for their journey with their CHD child. In every chapter of this book, you'll find a piece of our story and a major life lesson that we learned from it. And you'll find reflection questions and helpful advice at the end of each chapter to just kind of help you process everything you read in the chapter and put it to practice in your own life. I'm going to read to you today from the introduction of our book, but I've got to tell you a quick story to set up the passage first. So it is back on the morning of Harding's very first open heart surgery. Tom and I are with Harding in the hospital room, and we're holding him and we're crying. We're just so scared of what the future holds. We're worried about Harding. Is he going to make it through this first surgery? And we don't want to pass him off to the doctors just yet. We're just holding him tightly. And this doctor comes in and sees us and sees how worried and upset we are. And he has compassion on us in that moment and says, "Hey, is it okay if I show you guys something real quick?" Tom and I didn't really want to peel ourselves away from Harding at that moment, but we politely just turned to him and said, "Sure, what's up?" And the doctor pulls out his phone and he shows us this beautiful picture of a little boy who has a party hat on and is just covered head to toe in chocolate cake. And he's got this huge smile on his face. It's the most joyful picture you've ever seen in your life. But we were a little confused as to why he was showing us that picture. But he very quickly explained that this was a picture of his son. And he said, "This is a picture of my son on his first birthday. And he had the heart surgery that Harding is about to have today." Gosh, in that moment, it was the very first time that Tom and I truly felt hope for the future with our child. And it was all because somebody took a moment to encourage us and give us hope. And so that is the lead in for this passage from the introduction of our book. "We may never meet in person, but as a CHD parent, we already know 2 things about you. First, neither you nor your child deserve the pain or hardships that come along with CHD. What you're going through is a tragedy, and we deeply understand the fear, isolation, anxiety, depression, and anger you feel. Second, we know there is a way to convert your hardships into positive and valuable life experiences. There is a path through this experience that provides joy, contentment, love, and peace amidst the storm, and we want you to join us on that path. Understand, we don't come to you as perfect parents who have it all figured out. We have flaws and are far from perfect. Also, this path we speak of is not an easy one. It took us a long time to find it, and we made many wrong turns along the way. To this day, we sometimes stumble and trip as we continue down our own CHD path. Just think of us as scouts on your journey who have seen a little further up the trail, and we are here to share the powerful lessons and insights that we've discovered. Let this book be your own portrait of a child covered in his chocolate birthday cake, and allow our words to give you the hope and courage you need to embark on your family's CHD journey. When the struggles seem unbearable, remember that there are countless families who have gone through this same terrifying experience and come through with peace, joy, and strength. Ours is just one of a multitude of other similar stories. If our family was able to do it, yours can too. Thanks, everyone.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Todd Hosey, and I am the author of 2 books of the Reaper series called Steal the Reaper, which I'll be reading from shortly, as well as the upcoming sequel, Hunt the Reaper, which comes out March 2nd. So there's a shameless plug for you. Before I start reading a little snippet from Steal the Reaper, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about myself and my family and how we're involved with the CHD community. Our son, Daniel, was born in 1999 with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and he underwent 3 open heart surgeries before the age of 3. And without a doubt, that's been the most difficult time of our life. Praise the Lord that after those 3 surgeries, Daniel's gone 20 years without any major heart issues. So no longer has he had to go in for any type of surgeries, but we have regular visits with his cardiologist, and our prayers were answered that he's been happy and healthy, relatively speaking. So we're certainly grateful for that. And I just want to say a word of encouragement to you. If you are the parent of a child with a CHD issue, or you yourself have a heart issue, I would just say hang in there. I know this might seem a very difficult time for you. I remember my wife and I, it was like hour to hour, not knowing if our child was going to live, and dealing with trying to care for him. And we understand how stressful that can be. But I would encourage you to seek help, whether it's through family and friends or respite through the hospital or other organizations. Make sure that you take care of yourself and get help. You can't, well, I don't want to say you can't do it alone, but you certainly need that support. So hang in there. I think, I want to share this message because back in the day when we were going through this, writing books seemed as an impossibility. But life gets in the way sometimes of your dreams, but that doesn't mean your dreams are over. They might just be on hold for a little while. So certainly we've met some of the best people in our lives because of our son's heart defect. And so definitely reach out to your community, reach out to your family and friends, and ask for help. And don't think that your dreams are over. You may have to put things on hold, but you can certainly find a way. So I hope that this encourages you. And I must say, as I get to reading a little bit of Steal the Reaper, I will warn you in advance that it has nothing to do with congenital heart defects. It's a fast-paced action thriller. So if you like Tom Clancy and Michael Crichton, then this may be a book you want to pick up. It's fictional and certainly meant to entertain. So I hope that maybe it gives you some type of escape from what's happening in your life right now. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to read a little bit right now. And just so you know, I'll be giving away a signed hard copy or paperback, or if you prefer an audiobook, I can give you that as well. So good luck to the lucky winner. And so I'm going to read a little bit right now. This is just from chapter 1, just a short little snippet here, but So chapter 1 is titled Freight Jockeys. Shabwa Province, Yemen, 24 December, 1830 hours local. Mayday, Mayday, the rescue pilot called over the radio. This is Husky 1-1 declaring an emergency. We are going down. Repeat, Husky 1-1 is going down. Dense smoke billowed from the Pavehawk's starboard engine as the crippled helicopter narrowly crested a low-level mountain peak. Inside the cockpit, multiple warning alarms squawked as the pilot gripped the cyclic stick with both hands in a brave fight to keep the aircraft from spinning out of control. A valley of flat desert was visible from the cockpit window, offering the perfect spot to attempt an emergency landing. Come on, baby, work with me, he said between gritted teeth. To his right, the co-pilot subconsciously bit his lower lip as he raised the collective lever, trying to maintain lift. The chopper responded with a loud boom, shuddered violently, and then dropped, lifting the occupants out of their seats. We're losing power, he grunted. I can't keep her up. The pilot reached down with his left hand to grab the other collective lever to help, but he quickly decided against it. Nothing could stop them from falling out of the sky at this point. Now it was a question of how graceful their crash landing would be. He cocked his head sideways and shouted to the 3 passengers in the back who were holding on for dear life. Brace for impact. I'm dumping the fuel, the co-pilot said with steady resolve. Do it, the pilot affirmed. Working his foot pedals and cyclic together, the pilot managed to keep the Pavehawk's nose up as they descended rapidly. The next 10 seconds felt like an eternity as both pilots squeezed every ounce of remaining power from the Sikorsky HH-60G's twin turboshaft engine. 5 feet above the ground, the engine finally gave out, and the helicopter dropped unceremoniously. The sudden impact broke the landing gear, and the momentum rolled the aircraft over on its side. Catching the ground, the 4-bladed main rotor sliced into the desert floor. It disintegrated instantly, spraying metal fragments in all directions. Circling at 5,000 feet above the crash site, the pilot of an AC-130U gunship spotted the plume of black smoke rising from the downed helicopter. The gunship, designated call sign Red Wing, was tasked with providing overwatch for the rescue mission. Red Wing, this is Control, called the Joint Terminal Attack Controller from nearby Camp Lemonnier. Do you have eyes on Husky 1-1? Affirmative, Control, the Overwatch pilot replied. The crash site is half a click north of the main highway. Fuselage looks intact. Copy that, Red Wing. Any sign of survivors? Stand by, the pilot replied evenly. After a brief pause, he reported, Control, I see movement. Thank Christ, the controller dropped his head in relief. Looking up to his radar, he said, Roger that, Red Wing, hold position. The pilot confirmed the order, then looked west and noticed vehicle headlights coming from a nearby village 5 clicks away. Control, this is Red Wing. Looks like we woke up the neighborhood. The last thing they needed was an angry mob of locals gathering around the crash site, pumping their AK-47s in the air. I count 3 inbound vehicles heading towards the crash site. Tell SAR to plan for a hot LZ. So there you go. That's the beginning of Steal the Reaper. And from that point on, it is nonstop action. And I think if you like stories with a female protagonist, you're really going to like this one. And anyway, so I hope that gives you a little idea of Steal the Reaper. And again, I wish you the best on your CHD journey. If you have any questions for me or my wife, you're welcome to reach out to us through my website, which is toddhosey.com. And with that, I will end this. Take care, everybody.
Hi, my name is Stacy Monty. I'm the author of the Echoes of Joy devotional series and Death by Dice, a Bunko Club mystery, the first book in a Christian cozy mystery series. I'm also a member of the Heart Community Collection, which is a group of authors and creatives who support those with congenital heart defects through our work. While I don't have CHD myself, I'm proud to be a member of the Heart Community Collection to help support and encourage those who do through the positive messages in my books. Today, I'm going to read an entry from Echoes of Joy, a devotional for animal lovers. I'm reading entry 13, titled Lingering with Lily. We start with a verse, Romans 12:12. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Lily pulled me down the street, tugging hard at her leash. She stopped abruptly to sniff around the bottom of the neighbor's trash can. She walked 2 steps and sniffed a spot on the ground, and then wandered into the road to sniff a piece of gravel. Satisfied, she took off again, only to careen into the yard 2 houses down to sniff something in the grass. The rest of our walk continued in much the same way. A series of starts and stops as Lily wandered as far as her leash would allow. As she lingered over another invisible scent on the ground, I grew impatient to move on. I had a purpose to exercise, but Lily had a different, perhaps better purpose, to enjoy herself. Walking with Lily put my patience to the test. I wanted to get my steps in and finish the course so that I could get on with my day. But Lily had no need of such things. The more I walked with Lily, the more I understood the value of waiting and lingering over the small things. Over the years, I have asked the Lord for many things for which He has asked me to wait. His answer hasn't been no, but I haven't heard yes yet either. I wait for healing from migraines, for physical and emotional healing for family and friends, for direction about working with a particular client, for guidance about a big financial decision, and the list goes on. According to Galatians 5:22 and 23 in the New Living Translation, patience is a fruit of the Spirit, but the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against these things. As believers, we all have these fruits within us, and we can ask God to help them grow. Most people don't want to ask for patience, knowing that patience will then be required of them. But whether we ask or not, situations arise in which we must exercise patience. How we respond is up to us. We can learn to take advantage of the wait. I have learned to walk in place while Lily explores. Although I'm still waiting, I'm being active during the delay, and we can do the same as we wait on the Lord. We can read His Word, pray, and gather with other believers. As we wait, we will grow and become the person He wants us to be. Let's pray in closing. Dear Jesus, I pray that the fruit of patience will continue to grow in me as I wait for You to move. Thank You for providing situations in which Your fruit can grow in me. Amen. Thank you for joining me today.